Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here, welcome back to another Monster Hunter World video, and in this video we are talking about armor and weapons. In the most recent trailer, the Elder Dragons trailer that dropped, if you guys haven't seen that or seen my breakdown, I've linked them down below. However, in that trailer we got a look at some more hunters going face to face with monsters, and a few of them were wearing some new sets of armor. They typically do this in the trailer. They have hunters equipped in, these pre-made loadouts. A lot of the time in the most recent trailers we've seen the same sets cropping up time and time again. But in the most recent one, as we get a little bit closer to launch, we have seen a few new additions to the roster. So I figured what I would do in this video is step through those segments and basically call out what the armor sets are, the monsters they link to, and also the weapons they're using, at least for the most part. There are a few that we're going to have to make some educated guesses for, but either way, I figured this will still be useful for you guys. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. If you do, then a like would be super appreciated. Comment down below if you have any questions. But first up, the first scene where we see a lot of hunters is, of course, in the online gathering hub. We see them gathered around this table. Most of these are sets that we've seen before, or at least from what we can see. Some of them are a little bit hard to distinguish from, the distance and whatnot, but starting from the top left and working counterclockwise, you have the Legiana set, because the first one I can't see, it's behind like the ropes and whatnot. Probably Ratheon set, but either way, Legiana set, followed by Rathalos, followed by Tobikadachi for the females, Kuluyaku, Ingot set, the Puke Armor set. Then of course, go over to the right side, we have the Anjanath set. The next one I'm not entirely too sure, it's a little bit bulky, so I can't quite make that one out. We then have the Tsitsiyaku Armor Set, Jagras, Bone, and also the Paolumu set. So that is our first look at a lot of hunters decked out in some gear. Also, I just want to bounce back to this one here for a second. This is a rather interesting Palico Armor Set. Most of the Palico sets we've seen already, but this one, I can't even begin to make out what it is, but it looks almost like a kind of bone/wooden spacesuit. Honestly don't know. Looks kind of cool. I want to see more of that. And we get a different view of that if we jump over to the next scene when they are at the arm wrestling barrel. You can see over to the right hand side, we see that Palico again, but this time from the front. Hence why I said it looks kind of like a spacesuit, because you've got this sort of glass bubble at the top. However, interestingly, I want to go and scan over to the left hand side. You see this hunter standing here in this rather interesting set we haven't seen before. It's not too clear to make out, and at this stage, I think it's a little bit hard to work out exactly where it comes from. If I had to hazard a guess, I'd say potentially that new bone zombie looking wyvern we've seen, because it kind of looks sort of like a vampiric armor set. You got the black and red color scheme to it, almost looks like something you might see in Bloodborne, and to a certain extent kind of reminds me of the Astral set from Generations, but a little bit different again. So that is a new armor set, haven't seen that one before, not entirely sure where it comes from, but still something worth calling out. Then if we jump over to the next segments where they actually start doing some of the gameplay, we see the reveal of that dragon that I just spoke about, or the wyvern, the zombie looking one that we just saw. We have a hunter here wearing full Diablos gear, rocking the Diablos bow. And then after that, in the next scene, we have a female hunter wearing what I believe to be the Odogaron armor set. We get a better look at it a little bit later on the male, but the only reason I'm kind of thinking this is because the coloration of monsters typically translates over to the armor set, and this one has these very distinct red parts to it, these sort of muscly looking red parts, and that sort of matches the way that Odogaron looks. Again, we'll kind of talk more about that in just a second. And as for the insect glaive, this is also a new one. It looks slightly different to the Anjanath one, so I feel like this is also probably an Odogaron insect glaive. A lot of the time, not always, but a lot of the time in these trailers, they tend to match up, the weapons that you're using with the armor sets and stuff, so there is that to consider. But either way, that is a new armor set and a new weapon that we haven't seen before. And in the next part, where there's a hunter going toe-to-toe with Teostra, we have the Legiana set, this time on the male, and again, I'm going to assume it's a Legiana bowgun, because the coloration sort of matches, and it's kind of got those interesting wing-looking components to it, so that's also a possible match there. The next scene is a longsword user sliding down the slope wearing Ratheon gear, but this time wielding a Juratados longsword. It deals water damage, as you can see there, but these ones are very identifiable. You can clearly see that in the armor sets. We'll see a little bit later as well. And I've made a couple of the Juratados weapons whilst I was playing in Japan, so yeah, those ones are very easy to notice, but that comes from the bone longsword path. So of course it will change form as you progress, as you kind of work your way up the tree, but either way, that is pretty sweet. Next up, we of course have your regular kind of iron hammer. Not entirely sure what this armor set is, in truth. It almost looks like the female version of that one I couldn't quite identify back in the online gathering hall. There are certain parts of it that just look kind of like your bog standard iron male, but then some of it looks a little bit different, so can't quite place this one. If any of you guys have any ideas, by all means shout down below. But then the next scene is, of course, a Lance user going up against Barroth, wearing the Puke Armor Set, but wielding the Ratheon Lance, also looking pretty sweet. Again, going from the Iron Path, but this is probably a little bit further down because it looks like it's slightly more Ratheon focused than before, because the way that you look at these weapons is that it seems, from what we've seen up until now, you typically build the weapon off of like one of those base paths, either iron or bone, and as you upgrade it, it starts to lean more towards that monster's form. So early on, it might just look like a bone weapon with, say, some Ratheon scales on it, and then as you go further, it looks slightly more like a Ratheon weapon. So that's kind of cool. Next up, we have a bow user doing that pretty sweet move. I love this one. That's the one where you basically dash into like a mushroom wall or one of those walls that you can run up, and you essentially do this really flashy shot. But the armor set being worn here appears to just be the bog standard kind of iron armor set, or the sort of alloy metal one, and the bow, not entirely sure. Part of it looks like the Anjanath bow because of course the, you know, coloration and whatnot, but then you've got these other spikes on top of it that could come from something else, so that one's a little bit harder to place at the moment. So if we then move on from there, we get a look at a hunter wearing Kikuyu armor and wielding the Anjanath sword and shield, of course in the earlier form. The next one is a female hunter, Legiana gear with the bone dual blades. And then after that, this one's quite interesting. That armor set we saw back in the Hunter's Hub, when there was that guy standing over to the left of the arm wrestling barrel wearing that rather kind of vampiric armor set that I spoke about, the one that looks like it comes from Bloodborne. That is, or this appears to be the female version of that, this time with the hunter wielding a different insect glaive, which I believe to be the Tsitiyaku insect glaive, because if you look at the part around the blade, that looks remarkably similar to the kind of head fans, or however you want to describe it, basically things that comes out of his head when it goes to do the flash attack. So I believe that is where this one comes from. But the actual armor set itself, again, looks really interesting, but they've been really clever in this trailer. They've only shown, like in this segment, where you see the insect glaive user vaulting, so we can't really get a good, clear picture of this armor set in either instance. So this one is still a bit of a mystery, but still something worth calling out. After that, we have an armor set we've seen before, the Kikuyu Armor Set, and the switch axe being wielded here, I believe, comes from Legiana and also appears to dish out ice damage. In the next segment, we have a hunter wearing the bone armor set with a heavy bowgun. After that, you have a male Palumu gear with a Tobikadachi charge blade. I appreciate this one's come up a fair bit because in some of my gameplay that I recorded from Japan, I often wear this charge blade, or I have the earlier form of this charge blade on my back, and sometimes people have called it out and be like, is that Zenoga? Is that something else? But no, this is from Tobikadachi, so it dished out lightning damage, or thunder damage, should I say, and that is that's the charge blade, and that's where it belongs. Next scene is the Tobikadachi armor set, again for the females, but the hunting horn this time is the, or at least I think it's a Paolumu horn, again coming from the bone path, but you can clearly see that white fluffy coating to it with the slightly dense, scaly looking part that, you know, clearly shows up on the Paolumu's tail. Next up, Hunter and Anjanath gear going to town on a Tsitiyaku's head. Looks a little bit brutal. We have a hunter here wearing full Joratados gear with the Ratheon Gun Lance. And then this segment here, this is the one that I want to call out that links back to the one I spoke about earlier on. This, I believe, to be the male Ordogadon gear. Of course, this isn't confirmed at this stage because we haven't had a chance to actually see it in the smithy, but if you zoom in and take a look at the actual kind of components, you've got these weird sort of muscly looking segments to them that almost matches up the body type on Ordogadon, and of course the red colour scheme really carries through. It's also kind of got this Asian theme to it as well. You see the wraps around the legs that kind of match up with the Naga gear from before, and you've got this interesting, you know, mane hanging down the back of it as well. So really cool looking armor set from what I can see here. I want to see the front of it. That's something we haven't seen just yet, but either way, that is a possible link. Then, as we begin to draw closer to the end of the trailer, or at the end of this segment, this is just more kind of group hunting here with hunters wearing, you know, armor sets we've seen before, wielding weapons we've seen before. Again, here is a hunter wearing the Legiana gear, and this time that's the Legiana longsword. And you can also see in the distance a hunter with the Diablos gear and the Diablos charge blade too. So, that's pretty much it from the trailer. I do want to call out this segment here. This is not entirely sure what these are. I'm going to assume these are the Coral Highlands equivalent of the Grimmelkind, or their kind of Grimmelkind clan, because we've seen before in different instances, like if you go around the Wildspire Waste and you mount the Barroth near that central kind of ravine area, then if you're close enough to the wall, the Grimmelkind will jump down, throw a net on it, and they'll kind of hold it in place for a little bit. It could well be that if you, I don't know, mount a monster in this area, then maybe these guys jump out and start shooting. There's still so much we don't know just yet, but it is really cool to see them. They do look very different to your typical Grimmelkind, because normally you just see them as cats. These guys have like full-on armor sets, so not sure what they are, but that poor Tsitiyaku is getting completely destroyed there. And also the last thing worth calling out as well actually comes from the key art, this one here. Again, most of the hunters we've seen with the armor sets before, but the insect glaive user, top right, is wielding a Tsitiyaku insect glaive, and bottom left, there's this interesting looking blue ice looking bow. Not entirely sure where it's from, but it could also be Legiana because we know that has ice type weapons and it's kind of got those matching feathers. So for the time being, that's pretty much it. That is essentially just scanning through, going over all the armor sets that we've seen in the most recent trailer, all the weapons, trying to identify them wherever possible. There are a couple of speculations there, but most of those ones are confirmed. So if you guys had any questions, hopefully that answered them. If you have any more questions, drop them down below. But otherwise, keep it locked. There's more stuff coming your way very soon over the next few days. But thank you for watching. Take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace out.